Well, hello there, friends. This is Alan Terry, and just wanted to let you know I went to Albuquerque and I found evidence that Andy faked his death. Here he is, and as you can see, I've blurred this out because you're all a bunch of assholes and you don't deserve to see him because you just want Andy to be alive so you can brag about it to your friends that you were right, and that's just a very disgusting way to act, and you don't deserve to see him. Tomorrow, I'm going to have lunch with my best friend, Andy Kaufman. You guys aren't going to get to meet him.
Yeah, run to that first one, man. Put the lotion, put the lotion in the basket. Put the lotion in the basket.
Yeah. May 16th, the date of the greatest magic trick. Can I please be included in the newest flick? Will I find you hiding at the edge of the world? When will the real reveal uncurl? May 16th was a phenomenon intended to be grand. Houdini has unlocked the smoke with his mirror hand. Silly game of monster mask trickery. Terrified my curiosity. This puzzlementary, give to me the key. This puzzlementary, give to me the key. Since May 16th, you've been running like a mad ox. That red screen just might reveal the Wizard of Oz. A reality that's harsh for our eyes.
Nope.
I wanna give the golden ticket. I wanna be in on a secret. This puzzlementary, give to me the key. This puzzlementary, give to me the key. Your pal CEC.
Nope.
Whatever is unknown is magnified. So don't be afraid of what you don't know, because remember, it always seems a lot worse than it really is.
Yeah. Good evening. Many of you know, my name is Tony Clifton. I'd like to thank, on behalf of myself, my management team here with Sobering Stories. I appreciate the invitation. It's been represented to me that last week you discussed a good friend of mine by the name of Jim Carrey. Now, in light of everything going on with Jim, I will withhold from speculating on that whole situation. But what I can talk about, what we came here to talk about, now would be the late, great Andy Kaufman. Despite what you may have heard, Andy Kaufman, no relation, him and I, not the same. He's been riding my coattails for a really long time. And I'll tell you right now, had he not already been to the grave, well, he would have had to meet his maker right here. I'll tell you that right now, right here in Tony Clifton. Appreciate this prestigious honor, being asked here to come talk about Andy. And, well,
Let's go.
Alcohol.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Keep talking that way. I'll have you finished before the end of commercial break. Oh, we're back? We're back? Okay, we're back. Welcome back. Sobering Stories. Me, Tony Clifton. If it's your first time here, go ahead and please make sure you like this video on the way in. We want to make sure we push this video out to as many people as possible. Make sure everyone knows about Andy Kaufman. If you're a returning subscriber, it's great to meet you. I'm first time here on the channel, but the DJ character seems like a pretty seems like a good guy. Now, there's just one thing I like to say about Andy Kaufman, and really all I want to say is that though he never was able to reach the level of stardom that I've reached, he is a legendary figure in the world of comedy. Andy pushed boundaries, really taught us that we can do whatever we want on stage. You could fake a heart attack, maybe even fake your own death. There's a lot of people out there that think he might have faked it. Now me, I don't believe all that conspiracy, tinfoil hat, all these loonies out here. Crazy. My man is dead. Okay?
But is he, though? Because after diving into Jim Carrey last week, I don't know. I was kind of interested. So I figured we have to dive into Andy Kaufman. We have to figure out if he really pulled the ultimate prank, the ultimate hoax, and faked his own death.
I'm going to hit you guys with a fun fact. Andrew Geoffrey Kaufman shares the same birthday as Jim Carrey. Let that sink in for just a second. Yep. True story. January 17th. Obviously different year, but, true story.
No, seriously though, how wild is that? Jim Carrey has an obsession with Andy Kaufman, develops a very similar style of humor to Andy Kaufman, plays Andy Kaufman in a biopic about Andy Kaufman, and they share a birthday. I think that's pretty wild. But Andy Kaufman was born January 17th, 1949. Jim Carrey born January 17th, 1962. Andy was born the oldest of 3 children to Stanley and Janice Kaufman, or Kaufman. His brother's name was Michael, sister's name was Carol, and they grew up in the Long Island, New York area. Stanley was extraordinarily affluent because he started as a jeweler, as a salesman, and then he moved up to owning his own business, owning his own jewelry store. He was extremely wealthy and did fairly well for himself to where they could afford really nice, affluent living in the Great Neck area of Long Island. And here's another quick little fun fact for you guys. Great Neck was the inspiration for West Egg in The Great Gatsby, which was basically just the wealthier part of Long Island in The Great Gatsby as like a fictional place. That is relevant because Andy Kaufman would literally for like 4 to 5 hours at a time just read The Great Gatsby as one of his comedy sets.
Hi, I'm Andy, and hello, how are you? Oh, the cow goes, So anyway, then I thought, well, what should I do? What should I do? I was at a loss for what to do. So I saw this book. What I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to read it to you, and then perhaps you could point out some subtleties I might have missed. Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. You know, let me tell you something. I think what we need nowadays is more discipline. And there was something gorgeous about it. What? I was told I could take all the time I want, and now they asked me to leave. I was going to read you the book, and then I was going to play you the music record. No, you don't want the record either, do you? All right. Do you really want the record? You really want the record? All right, I'll do the record. But first the book. All right. You want the record? Yeah, you want the record. All right, they'll have the record, then we'll have... No, all right. Enough is enough. All right. Only Gatsby is the man who did
I can't even imagine being one of the people that would stay until basically 2 or 3 in the morning and had to get kicked out. They were basically just enjoying an audiobook live in person with Andy Kaufman. So hilarious. Andy's mom, Janice, notes that even from the early age of 9 months old, she knew he was going to be a song and dance man because he was dancing and bouncing around in his crib. Kids are definitely crazy like that at 9 months, but already she could tell he just loved music. He loved singing and being loud, and she could just tell he was destined for something great. Now get this, in typical fashion, Andy started practicing his craft before he even went to elementary school. He would do what was called TV broadcasts from Channel 5 News at his little home at 5 Robin Way, which is what inspired the Channel 5 News. But he would just reenact like movies, news broadcasts. He would do multiple characters, completely using his imagination with like a little painted on camera on the wall. And he would just use his imagination for what he was filming and like the things he was doing on TV. Talk about setting himself up for a life in the spotlight. In 1954, Andy started school at Saddle Rock Elementary School. And then in 1956, his parents note how he was starting to do magic tricks and just performing little skits and things for the family. And his dad notes specifically how he was just very difficult. He never accepted things at face value, and he always questioned pretty much everything, which is amazing. We should all be doing that. If you weren't already aware, Andy Kaufman was extremely strange, definitely a little different from the rest of us. And that was always the case. At the age of 8 years old, on his own, he placed a free advertisement in the local newspaper for a child entertainer. So he would do kids' birthday parties or like kids' events. And he had these routines where he would just do weird sing-alongs with the kids to, typical like old McDonald stuff. He would do magic shows. He was just a little entertainer, singing, dancing, whatever. And one of my favorite things about this era is that he brought it into his adult stand-up career. It is one of the funniest things ever, but you would never guess that it would be this funny. And all he does is bring up 4 volunteers who sing along to this recording of Old MacDonald Had a Farm, but they just lip sync it. They don't actually have to sing. It's just hilarious, but it's so simple and so dumb. And I think it perfectly represents who Andy Kaufman is. He's like, I'm going to bring my 8-year-old self up on stage in my adult life, because that was Andy. He had this childlike innocence / creativity / imagination / ability to push boundaries. Because when you're a kid, you don't think about the consequences. You don't think about what's socially acceptable or like what people are going to be okay with. He was so childlike. And I feel like that's something that we could all benefit from, realizing that there's a little child inside of us that we've got to get back in touch with.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on this farm he had a cow, E-I-E-I-O. Here moved there, no, here oink, there oink. E-I-E-I-O.
When Andy was 11 years old, he started playing the bongo drums. And he also developed an obsession with Elvis Presley. Why? Who knows? What people say later on is that he was just obsessed with how famous he was, with how people reacted to him, just how viral of a human being he really was. And I think Andy always dreamed of attaining that same level of fame, that same level of notoriety, legendary status, and I think he reached it. Andy attended Great Neck North Junior High School, and when he was in school, he actually took this Otis Gamma intelligence test, basically an IQ test, and he scored 114, which I was a little surprised by, honestly. I thought that he would be genius level off the charts because of just who he was. But 114, definitely higher end on the average scale. So like above average, I guess. When Andy was 14 in 1963, there was apparently this thing where they were trying to raise money for UNICEF, the United Nations International Emergency Fund, I think, and they were trick-or-treating for UNICEF. So they were going around collecting money and things for children around the world instead of just collecting candy. Now, Andy wrote a short story, and this was titled Trick or Treat for UNICEF. And in typical Kaufman form, it's a story. The whole premise of the story is this kid named Bill going trick-or-treating with his mom for UNICEF. So they're not collecting any candy. They're just collecting coins and stuff for other kids. And the kid is just begging his mom over and over to go home, talking about how bored he is. Almost pointless and confusing, and you're left wondering, was that real? What was that? Which is a consistent theme throughout the rest of Andy's life. Also in 1963, him and his brother Michael go to a wrestling match with their grandma Pearl. Their grandma Pearl takes them to this WWF, I think it was, wrestling match. Insane. Grandma's so cool. Andy was obsessed with the theater involved with the WWF and the whole wrestling world. And it didn't really seem like it was fake back then, because it wasn't like it is now where we know it's fake. It seemed real. It seemed like these guys really had beef with each other. They really were wrestling it out to win these belts, and like it just the drama in the theater was so real. And Andy fell in love with it, and this would start his lifelong dream of wanting to become famous by being a famous wrestler. Andy would also become just this amazing poet. He starts writing tons and tons of poetry. He writes tons of short stories, lots of weird kind of screenplay ideas, but tons and tons of poetry. And his poetry was amazing, honestly. Some of his stuff is just really just outside the box, you know? One of the themes that we see in a lot of Andy's poetry stems from this idea circling death and dying. And one of the main reasons that he is kind of obsessed with this idea, according to Bob Zmuda, is that his parents lied to him about his grandpa's death when he was very young. Instead of just telling him straight up, yo, grandpa died, and this is how we deal with it, this is how we work through it, they lied to him and said, yeah, he just left, took off on an extended vacation, and he's never coming home, which, as you can expect, led to a lifelong trauma, wondering, why did he leave me? Why didn't he say bye? Why didn't he bring me with? Why am I never going to see him again? Why is he never coming home? Instead of just allowing him to understand and start coping with death at an early age. I mean, it's a part of life. It's something that you shouldn't hide from your kids. In fact, if anything, you should help them understand it as best as you can anyway.
And I would be very sad.
Do you remember what you were sad about?
His best friend is his grandfather. They called Papu. And he loved this little boy to death. And one day, the grandfather doesn't show up anymore. Where's Papu? Papu. The grandfather had died. They said, well, he went traveling out of the country.
Why didn't he take me with him? If he was my friend, you know?
It turned out that that might have been the wrong thing to tell someone like Andy, because Andy kept looking for Papu's side to come back, and maybe that's why he was sad.
Think of the pain of that, okay? The pain of rejection.
Andy has a book containing all of his poetry and short stories, and one of the interesting ones that I read was called The Rocking Chair. It's about this guy who's getting drunk by himself. He starts hallucinating, and then gets up, steps on broken glass, gets really mad, decides to go wandering the city, sees a bunch of people fighting and doing weird stuff. Eventually, he comes back to his apartment, sits back in his rocking chair, and then comes to from being drunk for just a few seconds. And he seems to be talking to the narrator, who's just this weird third-party entity. And he's saying, like, I ain't nothing. And then he starts singing, I ain't nothing but a hound dog, because obviously Andy's obsessed with Elvis. And that's the song that this guy was listening to when he got drunk before he went out on this crazy tirade. Right after that, he slumps over in this chair, falls over onto the floor, and seemingly dies. At the same time, all of his friends that he was wondering where they were and why he was drinking alone earlier in the night, they jump out and yell, surprise! They realize that he's dead. And as the narrator walks out and leaves the apartment, he says, some joke. So I thought this was kind of weird very, it alludes to him faking his death in the future for sure. Because on the 30th anniversary of Andy's death, his friends thought he might be coming back, so they held this welcome back return party. Andy never showed up, which kind of reminds me of this story. Despite being really smart and a phenomenal writer, once Andy got to high school, he was a D student at best. But when he was 16, he really tuned in, and dropped out. He wasn't very present. He joined the whole beatnik revolution and turned into a real product of the 60s. According to friends, they would just hang out, take lots of drugs together, take trips together, just, typical 60s stuff.
As a teenager, I was part of a group a group of friends who took drugs a lot, and we liked it and enjoyed each other's company and enjoyed getting stoned together.
And for someone who is as creative and out of the box as Andy is, I can only imagine how much this really expanded his horizons as Andy Kaufman. It should come as no surprise then that Andy really didn't identify with his wealthy, affluent Jewish roots. He grew up with wealthy Jewish parents in a fairly wealthy Jewish neighborhood, but money was never his end goal. It seemed like Andy was in search of something much deeper than that. So at the age of 16, he kind of moved out of his parents' house, rebelled pretty hard, joined the beatnik movement, and spent most of his time in Greenwich Village. He would sleep on park benches, staying in parks, romping around with friends, and this is where he would really start exploring Andy Kaufman. By 1967, Andy was able to pull his grades up to a C average, and he was able to graduate high school. He then took a year off, really trying to figure out what he wanted to do. Even his friend circle was like, we all really have a path that we want to go down, but Andy, we're not really sure what direction he's going to go.
We were all thinking, what's going to happen to Andy? We're starting to get near graduation, What in the world is Andy going to do? He's just not part of this world.
But after taking a year off, he realized that he wanted to go into television. So he enrolls at Graham Junior College, a really unknown, not big at all, not prestigious at all junior college. He enrolls in the television production program there.
No more you hear my footsteps in the morning, resounding on the hollow sidewalk, going to the grocery store for a little cornmeal and a nickel's worth of bacon.
While he's at this college, he actually starts his own little show called Uncle Andy's Funhouse, and he features a lot of the skits and things that he had written throughout his high school days, as well as a bunch of things he talked about and did on his whole Channel 5 productions.
Direct from Andy Kaufman's parents' house in Westbury, Long Island, it's time for Uncle Andy's Funhouse! I'm Uncle Andy, I'm Uncle Andy. We're gonna have a lot of fun today. I'm Uncle Andy, I'm Uncle Andy. In the good old USA. Uncle Andy, Uncle Andy. We're gonna have fun today. Uncle Andy, Uncle Andy. In the good old USA. Welcome to Uncle Andy's Funhouse. And here's my dog, Laz. Yes, he's just a good dog. Here we go. Here you go, Laz. There you go. Okay.
You may have a real hard time believing this, but Andy Kaufman was extremely shy. And the only way that he was able to overcome this stage fright was through transcendental meditation. In fact, he would start a real serious meditation practice where he would meditate 2 to 3 times a day. This was the only thing that allowed him to overcome the nerves and be able to get up on stage. But once that happened, he was determined to become a song and dance man. But before he could do that, there was just one thing he had to do. And if you guys are interested in Andy Kaufman even a little bit, I highly recommend listening to the Mark Maron, Bob Zmuda interview. It's 2 hours long, full of just amazing stories of Bob Zmuda and his time with Andy Kaufman. One of the stories he tells is this last thing that Andy had to do before really embarking on his entertainment career was he had to meet Elvis. And apparently back in those days, for the Las Vegas shows, they would always have the artists enter through the kitchen because, it was like you sit at a table, it's dinner and a show, So they would have Elvis come through the kitchen. Andy decided to make his way all the way out. He hides in this little closet for hours, even brings a jug so he can pee in it. Finally, he sees Elvis coming down the hallway. And when he pops out and he approaches him, all of his bodyguards are like, who is this guy? They're gearing up for some action. But Elvis is like, no, no, no. He can see that he's harmless. And he says, Mr. Presley, I just want to let you know that I'm your biggest fan. And one day, I'm going to be famous just like you. And Elvis reaches his hand out, puts it on his shoulder, and he says,
I believe that will happen. And that was it. And he walked away. And he goes back to New York. He goes back, goes to the Improv, puts him on. After that, he said the confidence that Elvis, he said he felt like it was like the Pope giving you the blessing or something,
Yeah.
And he said, a made man like in Goodfellas or something.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and just charged him so. He went to New York 2.5 years from that meeting with Elvis. Andy Kaufman was the hottest cabaret act in New York City.
And that's it. Basically gives Andy his blessing. His entertainment career just takes off after this. And I just want to take a quick second to not only plug my Elvis video. Of all the videos I've done, I think that is one of my better ones. It is so good and it's gotten no love. So go check it out if you're interested. The second thing I want to bring up is Elvis faked his death, allegedly. And Andy was obsessed with Elvis. So just something to keep in mind. Might mean something, might mean nothing, but think about it. In 1971, Andy would graduate from Graham Junior College with an applied science degree. He would start to figure out what his next move was. And this is when he starts performing at a local club run by a guy named Bud Friedman. And the place was called My Father's Place. It was an improv club in the Long Island area. And he would start doing his stand-up there. He would start working on his different characters. And this is obviously where he got his big break. There was 2 locations, one in New York and one in LA. So he would go out to LA periodically as well to perform his different routines.
LA, Toyota hybrid fucking cars, LA.
But the whole time, he did not like to be called a stand-up comedian or a comedian, any of those. He considered himself a song and dance man, really more of just an entertainer. He would do super weird stuff like the Great Gatsby thing, like the Old MacDonald thing. He would do his laundry on stage during his act.
We all agree on one thing. What the hell is he talking about? Will you welcome Andy Kaufman?
Cash for the merchandise, cash for the button hook, cash for the cotton goods, cash for the hard goods, cash for the fancy goods, cash for the soft goods, cash for the noggins and the pickins and the Perkins, cash for the hogshead, cask and demi-joe, cash for the pickles and the crackers and the fly paper. What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? Where do you get? What do you talk? What do you talk? What do you talk? You can talk, you can talk, you can bicker, you can talk, you can bicker, 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 you can talk, you can talk. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But he doesn't know the territory.
He would eat ice cream just on stage.
And I'd like to do for you right now the bit which got me thrown out of the improv 10 years ago. I haven't done it since, and although I have tried it a few times and it never has worked. But I'd like to do it for you tonight. Hi. Could I please have some ice cream?
Just
chocolate, a dish of chocolate ice cream, 1 scoop. And can you put it in a soup bowl so I can stir it around? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to bring you something to drink, too?
Maybe some water after. No, it's okay. I don't need anything to drink. Thank you.
He just had the most unique act I'm sure anybody had ever seen. I personally think that the humor in his act is partially due to the fact that 50% or more of the audience doesn't even realize that it's just a joke. It's just an act. They're like, is this guy for real right now? Andy was performing all over. His act was becoming really popular, but he still hadn't quite been discovered yet. So he decided to apply for basically some stage time at Rodney Dangerfield's comedy club called Dangerfield's, which I also found pretty interesting because, as we talked about last week, one of Jim Carrey's mentors and basically the reason he broke out in the first place was Rodney Dangerfield. So he was kind of a mentor to both of these guys. The parallels between their lives are insane. This would be a major step for him because it wasn't just an open mic night. These were paid gigs, established time slots for you. It would also be a little connection because he would go on to star in Rodney Dangerfield's special in 1983. Another massive influence that came into Andy Kaufman's life during this time was Bob Zmuda. Apparently, Bob Zmuda worked for Norman Wexler, and Norman was a very similar character to Andy, and Andy really looked up to him and was fascinated by him. So when he found out that Bob worked for Norman Wexler, he's like, yo, what's up? He was a guy who worked at the NYC Improvisation Club where Andy was typically performing. And over time, he developed a small relationship with Andy, just, working there. But that small relationship blossomed because they both realized that they were cut from the same cloth. Andy brought Bob Zmuda on to be basically a part-time writer with him. The two of them were not only best friends, but they were partners, business partners, working on this act together.
What's your name?
Bob Zmuda.
Bob what?
Bob Zmuda.
Zmuda? Bob what? Zmuda? Bob Zmuda? What kind of a name is that, Bob? What kind of a name is that?
It's Polish.
Oh, Polish. Polish, huh?
But it was in 1975 when a guy named Dick Ebersol says, hey, Andy, I love your stand-up routine. Like, I'd love for you to come and audition for this new show that we're about to drop on NBC called Saturday Night Live. I think you'd be perfect for it. So he brings in an audition tape, a lot of stuff from Uncle Andy's Funhouse, and he auditions.
Faster than speed, boo. More powerful than look, boo. Able to leap tall buildings and sink, bang. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird. It's plane. Nope, it's Superman. Yep, Superman. Strange visitor from another planet came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those bold me. Superman, who changed course of outer rivers, been still with his bare hands, and who skies Clark Kent, my man reporting for a great metropolitan newspaper, thoughts never end about it. Just the American way.
And unfortunately, he doesn't get a full-time, SNL slot as a cast member, but he makes multiple guest appearances on the show, including a cameo on the very first episode of SNL. Andy would be featured on SNL a total of 14 times, which is a lot of times. And one of the first characters that really erupted on SNL, as well as in his comedy stand-up routines, was
the foreign man. Thank you very much. He would do many different impressions, and he would do stories and jokes but he do impression of very famous man, the Elvis Presley.
Obviously, because, well, Andy loves Elvis.
All right, Elvis Presley.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The best part was that he would do the foreign man, and then he would do the Elvis, and then he would go back to the foreign man.
Thank you very much.
No explanation. And just like with Jim last week, never breaking the Andy character, Andy would sometimes take the foreign man character out of the studio. In this situation, he brought the foreign man onto the dating game show.
You did not ask me. You asked number 2 and then went to number 1.
But see, it's her prerogative to ask whoever she wants.
But I
You're
was
next. You are next. You're right. Let's hear your best ending for this sentence. I'll do anything for you except...
Except what?
That's what she wants to know.
You will do anything for me?
No.
Except what?
You will do anything for me except what?
I don't know. What do you want me to say? I will do... Do you know? I will not to maybe to stand on my head.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, you don't have to stand on your head for me. Okay.
It's in 1976, however, that Andy gets his big break because his uncle, who was a co-creator and writer for That Girl, introduces Andy to Carl Reiner and Dick Van Dyke. And Carl Reiner eventually gets his manager, who's also his nephew, George Shapiro, to represent Andy as his manager. This would start a long line of him being featured on numerous different talk shows, late night shows. Just, I don't know, Andy starts blowing up everywhere. Everybody wants a piece of Andy. He makes multiple appearances on the Johnny Carson show, and then in 1977, he joins Sonny and Cher as their opening act on their concert tour.
Thank you very much.
This is when Andy's career in television really started. He was featured in a television pilot called Stick Around, and he played Andy the Robot Helper, and it was like a space-aged comedy, and obviously it didn't go anywhere, but he was a part of the pilot. He also appeared in the show Hollywood Squares as the foreign man for a whole week of shows. In that same year of 1977, Bob Zmuda actually joins Andy out in LA finally, because the two of them have been separated for a while. And this is when they begin working on the Andy Kaufman special, which would eventually air on ABC and PBS. And it was really just a combination of the Uncle Andy's Funhouse and this midnight snacks that they did when they were at the Improv. It was like a improv show that started at 2:30 a.m., but it was more of a whole production than just like an improv stand-up set. And it would seem after achieving this level of success, Andy finally had the ability to really push the boundary and push the envelope a little bit further. And instead of just trying to make his audience uncomfortable, maybe a little bit anxious and just not really sure what's going on, he really wanted to try and get to people in the audience. So the first thing he did was he hired Tony Clifton, whom you guys heard from earlier. No, I'm not Andy Kaufman. Tony would start out as Andy's opening act, and then, of course, Andy would come on during their shows at the Comedy Store, which is yet again another place that Jim Carrey really made his come up. Andy started challenging women in the audience to wrestling matches. He would say, I'll give you $1,000 or my hand in marriage if you can beat me in a wrestling match. And this was simply just to get a reaction out of the crowd.
You really need a certain kind of way of thinking to wrestle, strategy and all that. And I just don't think women think that way. I think that they're mostly good for, and I mean, you might laugh when I say this, but I think they're good for scrubbing the potatoes, washing the pot, putting it in the pot. Please. So if there's any woman out there tonight who would like to prove me wrong, like to take me on in a wrestling match, I'd like to call you up all now. You can just volunteer. $500 to any woman that could pin my shoulders in 3 minutes. Here's my referee, Bob Zmuda.
Andy seemed to love being hated because, well, if you're hated, you're still on people's minds. You're still a topic of discussion. Bad publicity is still publicity, right? Also, here's a little fun fact for you guys, because I know you love fun facts, but Andy would regularly get a boner when he was wrestling, so he would have to tape it down to his leg with gaffer tape, which sounds awful, like really bad. And no, he didn't stop there. He also made sure to include tons of misogynistic comments, saying things like, I'll get you back in the kitchen, scrubbing those potatoes, cooking in the kitchen, taking care of those babies, right where you're supposed to be. Of course, he's being totally satirical, but people take him super seriously, which is hilarious for the people who are in on the joke, not funny for the people who aren't in on it, but I think it makes it even funnier for the people who are in on it. After a year of touring around doing shows and concerts, Andy and Tony land back at the Comedy Store. They're doing their typical stand-up routine, but there's some special people in the audience. There's some producers from the show Taxi, and they love what they see. And they love, in particular, Andy's foreign man character. So they approach him, and they ask him to come and audition for this show. As part of the negotiations, Andy says that Tony Clifton has to be featured on 5 episodes of Taxi, or he won't do it. So they agree. He's brought in as one of the ensemble cast members for the show Taxi. But even with all of this fame and success, Andy would still go back to his hometown of Great Neck, and he would perform 2 shows for $3 a pop, both of which sold out, at his very own high school for a night of comedy and music with your very own hometown hero, Andy Kaufman.
Thank you very much.
As Andy gets into the production and filming of the show Taxi, he really does not like the constraints. He's limited to lines that other people wrote. He does not like being on a strict time schedule and being forced to produce, but not have any creative freedom, really. And so it really starts to wear on him, and he's really not very present with the rest of the cast. To the point where they're like, what's wrong with this guy? Does he think he's better than us or what? He just was not feeling it. In order to make money and to get his name out there and, I don't know, just accelerate his career, he sticks with it and continues to be the character Latka on Taxi. The funniest, most amazing thing that I learned about Andy throughout all of my research was that after getting this massive TV spot, he then goes and gets a job at this local deli called Jerry's Deli as a busboy. And as if he couldn't be any more of an enigma, he is just doing it to stay grounded. He says he doesn't want to lose touch with the people by being so high up in social status and fame that he doesn't remember his roots or what it's like to be amongst the people. But he also takes this opportunity to mess with people because they're like, there's no way that's Andy Kaufman bussing tables there. And then they're like, yo, hey, are you Andy Kaufman? And he'll be like, yeah, I'm Andy Kaufman. And they're like, can you do the thank you very much? He'll be like, thank you very much. And they're like, oh, it's not him. We thought it was him. And so they'll leave thinking that it's not Andy, but it was. He's such a legend. As Taxi continues filming, they hold true to their promise to Andy that Tony Clifton can not only have his own parking space, but he can be featured in the series. But after they bring him on set and allow him to start doing some scenes, they're like, this is not working. This guy sucks. He's not a good actor. We need to get him out of here. But they don't want to do it without talking to Andy first, because they know that Andy has a lot of say in terms of what Tony Clifton does. No, I'm not Andy Kaufman. Not Andy Kaufman, never been Andy Kaufman. And I'll tell you right now, anyone spreading rumors, making the assertion that I am Andy Kaufman, that'll be a complete fabrication on your part. So they ask Andy, like, yo, we want to fire this guy, but we don't know if that's cool. We know we promised you all these episodes, but it's just not working out. And so Andy's like, yeah, that's totally cool, but you have to fire him in front of all of the cast, everybody. And so they make this huge scene out of firing Tony Clifton on set. Clifton throws a huge fit, goes absolutely berserk, starts throwing things, pushing things, getting aggressive, and they have to call security to escort him out. And it's just like this viral, epic moment of him getting kicked off the set of Taxi. And of course, Andy is just relishing in this moment because, well, it's viral. It is one of those things that people talk about, and it only boosts up his notoriety. If you haven't seen the show Taxi, it's really funny. It's obviously an older sitcom, but it's just about this taxi service, taxi garage. Andy's character is a mechanic, and he doesn't really seem to get along with most of the cast members. But I think that he intended it to be that way. Andy is just an abrasive character, and he seems to get off on pushing your buttons and getting you across that line where you are just so mad at him that he evokes a reaction out of you. He loves it. But the show Taxi actually won a Golden Globe Award in 1979. And after the awards ceremony, when they were backstage, Andy was acting real pompous as if he was better than everybody else, and he was the reason that they won that award. Jeff Conaway, which is one of the other stars of Taxi, he admits in multiple interviews that he punched Andy in the face. And this wasn't like an act or a routine. This was just genuinely Jeff Conaway not liking Andy Kaufman. He called him an overindulgent nut, kind of true, at the same time, hilarious. And this is just something else that I see as Andy being at a major award ceremony, causing trouble because he knows it's going to bring him some sort of attention, some sort of publicity. Taxi really does accelerate Andy's career, like in a big way. He features on numerous other programs. He's still touring, hugely popular. He features on Cher's show, Cher and Other Fantasies on NBC.
Hey, are you the one they call Adam?
Yes?
Well, get up, spin it around. Let me look at you. You see, I think Eve is going to be a little bit more romantic. You know, she's going to want to cuddle you, slow dancing.
Why do I need Eve? Why can't I just stay with you?
Because I'm a snake. Look, you're going to like Eve. She's a real nice girl. You know, she's got nice hair, good legs, terrific personality.
Hey, Adam! Sweet cheeks, where are you? I'm afraid.
I don't blame you.
And then in 1979, he also releases his Andy Kaufman Carnegie Hall special. And this Carnegie Hall special is probably one of his more legendary moments. It's definitely featured in the movie Man on the Moon. It's a very epic scene. But that's because this Carnegie Hall performance was epic. And apparently when Andy was a kid, he was hanging out with his grandma, and he told her, one day I'm going to be playing Carnegie Hall.
I said, oh, come on. I said, yep, Grandma, I promise you I'll be in Carnegie Hall, and when that day comes, I'm going to give you the best seat in the house. So anyway, there's my grandma. See, I told you this would happen, right? Okay, anyway.
And that's where she sat to watch Andy's Carnegie Hall special. Epic, right? And it makes so much more sense why he has these I Love Grandma sweaters. I definitely need one of those. Not only did Andy bring his grandma out to Carnegie Hall, he also brought this homeless guy who was performing his little act out on the street, and Andy really liked it, so he brought him up on stage. And all I had to say to that was,
give him a big hand, guys. Homeless dude.
Times Square is the only place in the world I'd rather be when the Times Square coming, when the New Year's coming, I should say. Therefore, I'm so glad to be here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I never was on the stage before, but I'm telling you, all look just like New Year's. When you look at all the people and everything, you know what I mean? Well.
But this special proves just how far Andy will go to stun and confuse the crowd, to get a laugh.
And they sing, oh, ain't you glad to jingle, that jingle, jangle, jingle.
The last surviving member of the dance troupe of girls you just saw, the cowgirls with the horses. Let's bring her out with a rousing applause, Eleanor Cody Gould. Okay, well, do you remember the steps?
No.
Remember? Come on, faster, faster!
Is there a doctor in the house? Seriously. Is there a doctor in the house, please? Will you shut these lights off? Teddy, will you shut the side lights off here, please?
Can you believe that? He let the audience think that this old lady, who he then forced to do this performance, and then forced her to keep going faster and pushing her harder until she finally just died on stage. What, is this real? Like, what's happening? Literally epic, man, epic. Oh, and guess what? Yeah, that wasn't his grandma. That was Robin Williams. Shameless self-plug, check out my Robin Williams episode. But not everybody loved Andy. In fact, quite the opposite. There were so many people that just did not understand him at all, and they took his performances and his humor as extremely offensive and over the top. People would write hate mail all the time, and he would just collect that hate mail. He would save it in hopes of one day publishing a book called Andy Kaufman's Hate Mail. Talk about when life gives you lemons, right? Now, Andy's performed like over 100 different shows. He's been in this show Taxi for a while now. He is definitely making bank, right? Yes, but Andy still has all of his paychecks and all of his money get paid to his dad, Stanley. His dad, Stanley, just dishes him out a monthly allowance. Andy does not care about money at all. I think he just is really interested in self-expression, and I really think he loves the stage. He talks about just lighting up and turning into a different person, Jekyll and Hyde, when he's on that stage. And proof that he doesn't care about making money over his art form, he goes on this 99-cent tour. It's a national tour where all of the tickets cost 99 cents, so everybody can see Andy Kaufman live. That's amazing. When have you ever heard of that before? In 1981, there was this experimental show called Fridays. Kind of gives me Saturday Night Live vibes, like kind of just copying it. The show was featuring Andy Kaufman as their guest, and they're having this little sit-down dinner meal together, when out of nowhere, Andy just starts this massive confrontation with all of the other cast members. He starts dumping water on people, throwing food at people, and then the other cast members start doing it back to him, smearing potatoes on his face. It just turns into complete mayhem. And this is a live taped show, so this just is on air. Andy has to come back and issue a formal apology to the network and to the show. Just another instance of Andy going over the top, more publicity. And he takes it a step further. When he finally returns to the show, like months later, he talks all about how he's a reformed Christian. He's on his best behavior. He even brings up this Christian singer, Kathy Sullivan, and they sing a bunch of duets and Christian songs. Just, again, being over the top. I'm going to be on my Christian Sunday best behavior. At this point, Andy is all over the place. He is a busboy still at Jerry's Deli. He actually does an interview with Good Morning America at the deli while he's bussing tables. He also considers himself, actually, he doesn't just consider himself, he is the intergender world wrestling champion. because he's been consistently wrestling girls this entire time, and he is undefeated. He even has to defend this title in 1981 by wrestling 3 different women, and one of them turns into a draw. A month later, they have a rematch, and Andy easily defeats her. Still the intergender world wrestling champion. Andy is also still performing his comedy / sing and dance acts at different venues across the nation. He's also performing as Tony Clifton, allegedly, and he's still working on the set as a cast member for Taxi. But the next saga of the Andy Kaufman story would really start when he is brought in as a guest referee for a Jerry Lawler wrestling match. Andy would then begin in 1982 his long streak of 10 plus appearances on the David Letterman show. He starts with the early morning David Letterman show, which does not pan out very long before it turns into Late Night with David Letterman. And Andy is a sensation on this show each and every time. Something wild always happens. I feel like this is probably some of the most legendary moments of his career, is on David Letterman's show.
Have you actually adopted them?
Yes, now the adoption papers are actually legal, and we've actually adopted them, and I've actually adopted them, and I don't have a place to live yet because we're just staying in like
with friends and
or in hotels and stuff and on the road, but we do hitchhiking, and we're all together all the time.
Is it fun? Is it exciting? It sounds like this could be a TV movie.
Well,
maybe, huh?
Maybe.
Yeah, something to think about, sure. Now,
there we are now. If you
the
want to
kids
see
are
them.
here. Well, let's see. I would like to meet them again and see if they've grown, and then you tell us what they're doing and so forth. All right, bring your family out here.
It's Herb, George, and Tino.
Herb, George, and Tina. Herb, George, Tino. Nice to see you guys.
Andy challenges his first male opponent on the David Letterman show because a guy named Albert Goldman had written a biography of Elvis, and I guess Andy was not super stoked about it. So he challenged this Goldman guy to a wrestling match on the David Letterman show, but he didn't respond. But this would start a new trajectory for Andy, because shortly after this, he would realize that he could benefit from challenging a professional wrestler to a wrestling match. He's now the intergender world wrestling champion. That's got to mean something, right? Surely he can take on these guys. Andy decides he's going to call out Jerry the King Lawler, a professional wrestler. He challenges him to a wrestling match and begins this huge smear / theatrical campaign talking trash against Jerry Lawler. Whether it's real or not is yet again the genius of Andy Kaufman. My opinion is that it was entirely real for Jerry, but maybe not so much for Andy. I do think that Jerry realized the benefit of this little feud, though, because he obviously kept playing into it. But when Andy finally wrestles Jerry in the ring, he gets destroyed. Jerry ends up using an illegal move on Andy. He was so angry and so ready to crush Andy in the ring that he used the pile driver when he's definitely not supposed to. Hugely illegal move. He does it twice, which puts Andy in the hospital. Now, when he's at the hospital, the nurses and everybody says he was just fine. He was absolutely fine. Nothing bad happened to him. So maybe Jerry Lawler didn't actually pile drive him. There's a way you can like pinch their head between your legs so that their neck doesn't actually hit the ground, you know? But Andy decides when he leaves, he's going to take this neck brace, even though they say he's fine and he doesn't need it. And he's going to play out this whole thing as hard as he can. And the next thing that him and Jerry end up doing together is making an appearance on the David Letterman show together. And Andy continues to trash talk Jerry on the show, ultimately culminating in this moment here. One of the more interesting things that Andy did on the Letterman show was during one of the episodes in 1982, the very same year that him and Bob Zmuda started writing this like screenplay, this movie called The Tony Clifton Story. He signs his last will and testament on the David Letterman show so that he has witnesses, and this is in 1982. Now, what happens next? I'm not really sure what sparked this. It could just be the culmination of Andy's career ultimately leading exactly where he wanted. People truly like despising him, not understanding him, being completely confused by him. And it starts to lead to seemingly the downfall of his career. People didn't realize that Andy didn't really want the fame anymore. He was kind of burnt out with it. He was over it, and he was ready to move on to the next chapter. He was having trouble finding gigs because of all the backlash with his whole wrestling women thing and with the whole wrestling stunt and all the issues with Jerry Lawler. People just had a weird, bad taste in their mouth. And then, after multiple appearances on the Saturday Night Live show, they held a vote as to whether or not they should keep Andy on the show. Ultimately, the viewers have to call in, pay 50 cents per vote. Ultimately, Andy was voted off the show. There was 195,544 votes to dump him and 169,186 votes to keep him. A lot of people voted. Then, just a month after being voted off of SNL, Taxi gets canceled on the 112th episode. His whole career is crumbling around him, but he's seeming to love every second of it. By Thanksgiving of 1983, Andy had developed a pretty serious cough to the point where people were noticing. And then by December of 1983, Andy was just looking really gaunt, really thin, just sick almost. People at his shows were starting to notice. It was at this point that Andy was diagnosed with large cell lung carcinoma, aka lung cancer. Now, Andy did smoke briefly when he was younger, during his drug-fueled days. And of course, he smoked cigars as the character Tony Clifton. So he did smoke occasionally, but he was not by any means a smoker. And he had given up all of the substances. He turned his sights on Hollywood and his stage career, and he never looked back. He was clean, sober. In fact, he was a health nut. He was vegetarian up until the day he died, and he had nothing but health food stocked in his house, according to all of his friends. On top of the fact that he meditated 3 different times for multiple hours every day. So the fact that he developed lung cancer was already a little suspicious, but the doctors only gave him 6 months to live. They said that there was nothing they could do. It was too advanced. So in just a matter of months, he went from healthy and normal to his career disintegrating and then developing large cell lung carcinoma by December of 1983. Andy tried chemotherapy, but with how much of a health nut he was, he really wanted to try and do some sort of natural medicine to cure this cancer. And after trying a few different natural options, he found this, I don't know what I would consider it, kind of like experimental healing, where this healer doctor can actually remove the tumors from your body, take the cancer out of your body through this like ritual practice. And so he goes down with Bob Zmuda and Lynn, who's his girlfriend at the time, and he starts going through this treatment. And as he's going through this treatment, this doctor, his name is Leo, he's pulling out these tumors, bloody guts looking things. Literally looks like he's pulling Andy's tumors out of his body. But Bob Zmuda realizes he's palming these things, and then he's going from there and putting them in the bucket. But he's already got whatever's in his hand. He's making it look like he's pulling it out of Andy. But they don't have the heart to tell Andy because he seems to be in better spirits. Most of you guys know attitude can be a huge game changer. It can turn things around so quick. And his attitude definitely improved because he felt like things were working. In fact, he felt like he was cured for like a solid week. But then they started realizing that he was getting worse. And so after I think like 4 weeks of this treatment program, he decides to give up and heads back to the US. He continued appearing on different shows, including Letterman. He continued performing as Tony Clifton, but he was looking more and more frail each time he appeared. And unfortunately, on May 16th of 1984, Andy Kaufman, at the age of 35, passed away from lung cancer. Immediately, 85% of people out there don't believe it. They think it's a hoax. They think he's just pulling another one of his over-the-top pranks. He already had a lady have a heart attack on stage, so why wouldn't he do this? Made total sense. If anybody was going to do it, it would be Andy. And I think I mentioned this last week. Even Lynn, who was there and watched him disintegrate into this shell of a human and watched him pass away, even she still wonders if maybe he's still alive, because he was just that good at keeping you in suspense. You have no idea what to believe. Plus, lung cancer at the age of 35 as a non-smoker, extremely healthy guy who meditates and takes great care of himself, it doesn't make any sense. Last week I mentioned this for sure. Lynn and Bob Zmuda mentioned that Andy had a love for prostitutes, not just women, but men as well. Lynn speculates that maybe it wasn't lung cancer. It might have been HIV turning into AIDS fairly quickly, although I feel like that does take a little longer to progress. I don't know. But she speculates that it could have been this instead of lung cancer because of how promiscuous he was. Like, it was a lot. And they really didn't know much about AIDS at this point. This was like right before the whole AIDS epidemic, AIDS crisis happened. And though that is pretty convincing to lead you to believe that Andy might have done this, there's much more evidence as to why people think he faked his death. For starters, he literally called up Bob Zmuda and told him, yo, this would be the most epic prank ever. The most epic bit would be to fake my own death and then return like 20 or 30 years later. And Bob's like, dude, that's illegal. Please don't include me in that because I don't want to be on the hook for you faking your death. That's super illegal.
Then let me tell you about this, one of the most incredible controversies of all time. Did Andy Kaufman fake his death? And I'll take it through it step by step how this all came down. It all started around the time when Elvis Presley died.
Mm-hmm.
That controversy started. Did Elvis fake his death? Remember that?
Yes.
There was a little some of that. So we got to into that. And Andy was thinking about this. And one night, as you know how the comics would hang out at Cantor's.
Sure.
I got a call about 3:30 in the morning. He said, Zmuda, I got it. This is the greatest put on of all time. I said, what? He said, you got to come down here. I'm over at Cantor's. Come down here. You know, I'm living in Burbank, so I jump in. The guy's, oh, Andy, he says, you know all this controversy about Elvis, faking his death? I said, yeah. He said, could you imagine if a well-known performer actually did that? Do you know how big it would be? I said, so what? Now you're thinking of faking your death? He says, yes. First of all, it's illegal to fake your death. You could be arrested.
Right.
And anybody who aids you could be arrested.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to tell you this now. I think this, you and I have been for years. We've done every kind of practical joke under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
This is brilliant, but I must tell you right now, I cannot be involved with you doing this. And if you're serious about doing this, you cannot mention it to anyone.
But Bob's not the only person he told. He told so many people about this, including his girlfriend at the time, Lynn. He also told Jack Burns, Mimi Lambert, Bob Tischler, the SNL producer, Barry Blaustein, David Sheffield, George Shapiro, his manager, and he also told John Moffat, Bob Pagani, Jerry Lawler, Jeff Conaway, all of these different people that he worked with. But there's one person in particular that he told that I found really interesting, and that guy's name is Alan Abel. If you've never heard of Alan Abel before, don't feel bad, because I hadn't either. But apparently he's just a notorious prankster, very similar to Andy Kaufman. And what's very special about this Alan Abel guy is that he successfully faked his own death. The only difference is he decided that he couldn't keep it going past the date that they released his obituary. That day he came out and told everybody, surprise, ha. Andy was fascinated by this. He had so many questions, and he actually sought out Alan Abel, told him about his plans to fake his death, and asked him all these questions about how he actually executed his fake death scenario. I also found this article where Lynn actually admits to shaving Andy's head. So maybe he would have lost his hair from radiation chemotherapy, but we'll never know because his head was already shaved before that. Not only did she admit to shaving his head, but then in this photo where his head is clearly bald, because allegedly he went through chemotherapy, he's got the hairiest chest I've ever seen in my life. And you lose all of your body hair when you go through chemo, not just some of it. I think one of the biggest proofs, or pieces of evidence, I should say, that Andy might still be alive is the fact that him and Bob Zmuda 3 years before Andy died in 1981 into 1982. They were writing a screenplay movie about Tony Clifton called The Tony Clifton Story. And in this script, he actually tells Bob Zmuda, like 3 years prior to him dying, that they have to change the ending and they have to kill off Tony Clifton's character. They do that, but the way they do it is pretty wild. At the age of 45, Tony Clifton dies of lung cancer at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And then Andy Kaufman has to go the rest of the screenplay or movie acting as Tony Clifton. Now, that is extremely interesting when you consider the fact that after Andy passed away, there were multiple different sightings and shows featuring Tony Clifton, some of which Bob Zmuda was even in the audience.
I like how you really talk about Clifton as if he's a separate guy.
Well, I think you got to see, we're going to have, and I wanted to mention this because we're going to do, we did a movie, Tony Clifton, the movie.
Right.
Last May, Tony performed at the Comedy Store for 4 nights.
How many people are doing Clifton now? Is it just you?
Well, it's just Tony. I'm not allowed to do it now, not when he's doing it. I'll do my impression sometime of it, but Tony's Tony. Like I said, Tony does it. The people who have done Tony Clifton, of course, Andy has done Tony. Jim Carrey does Tony, because he does it in the movie. Paul Giamatti, who plays me in the movie, plays Tony, because in the scene he has to do that.
Right.
In the last scene of the movie, I play Tony. Bob Zmuda plays Tony.
Okay.
But then you also have, at one time, Andy Kaufman's brother played Tony. But now the real Tony, the legendary real Tony that you've seen on Letterman and on Merv and on Dinah Shore and all that, that is the Tony that we had at the Comedy Store last year in May, and he's recorded. I know this sounds all weird, but you've got to see this movie.
Wait a minute.
This is the quintessential.
So this is so no one's playing Tony.
Tony's Clifton.
Who was on the green room with Paul Provenza?
That was Tony Clifton.
You weren't Tony Clifton.
No. That's the real Tony Clifton.
After all this talk, you're going to fuck with me?
No, I'm telling you, I do an impression of Tony, but you could anybody who sees my impression of Tony, it's totally different from the real Tony Clifton. As is Jim Carrey's impression of Tony. Tony.
Come on, Bob.
Look, I'll tell you this, because there is the big controversy. Is it Bob Zmuda? Is it this person? Is it that person? All I could say, Mark, and I've gone through this before with critics, people have seen the show, that have seen Tony Clifton. You go through that movie, and you tell me if that is not the real Tony Clifton.
Okay.
Now, Bob Zmuda says himself that multiple people played the Tony Clifton character. Tony Clifton is the only person who actually does the character now, is what he says. But Jim Carrey's done it. Andy's brother has done it. Bob's done it. Paul Giamatti, whatever, from the movie, he did it. So there's multiple people who have acted as Tony, but he still keeps saying that there's this official Tony still out there who is the real Tony. That seems to be alluding to the fact that Andy might still be out there as the real Tony Clifton, finishing the rest of his screenplay or movie as Tony Clifton, instead of the reversal of him being Andy Kaufman acting as Tony Clifton for the rest of their story. What? That's so wild, right? And on top of Andy telling Bob Zmuda that he was definitely planning to fake his death, Bob includes it in his book that he truly believes that he did. That John Moffat guy, he truly believes that Andy did. George Shapiro, all of these people who Andy told, they truly believe that he still is out there somewhere and might even make a return someday. He said that if he was going to do it, he would have to go balls to the wall and be gone for like 20 or 30 years. And then his plan was to just make a reappearance out of nowhere 30 years later. So at the 30-year anniversary mark, Bob Zmuda, Lynn, all these other people have this welcome home, welcome back party for Andy, hoping that he would return. And unfortunately, he didn't. In my research, I stumbled upon this YouTube channel, and in the comments and most of the videos, there was this andykaufmanlives.com. It's been archived, but it's no longer active. And I was able to take a look at it. Massive page, tons of information, all related to Andy Kaufman faking his death, possibly, allegedly. Now, this site is run by a person who identifies themselves as King, just King capitalized. Like Elvis a lot of people are curious if this person running this site is Andy Kaufman. There's a bunch of email exchanges between this King person and Andy Kaufman fans, I assume. But there's one email that I found that I thought was really interesting because half of the email is spent talking about whether or not humans are truly above animals, wondering why if we see a hurt animal on the side of the road, why we don't call for medical attention. It's like a very philosophical, existential analysis, almost of a vegetarian's perspective. And Andy is a vegetarian, or was a vegetarian, possibly both, I don't know. So I found it to be pertinent to the story. Other people think the person running this site is a guy by the name of Stephen Maddox. This guy is allegedly Andy's son. When Andy was 16 or 18, I can't remember, he actually had a kid with this girl, but neither one of them could take care of this kid, so they basically allowed this girl's parents to adopt this kid.
Having a child? Get him up for adoption. Okay, so that's where little brother comes from. So, years down the line, these two were brought up believing that this woman was their sister, but she wasn't. She was their mother. She's their mother. This guy, meanwhile, while this is happening, while these kids are being raised, these two are together, right? Meanwhile, Kaufman is out being famous and getting on a taxi and all that stuff. All the stuff that we know about or read about or heard about by people out there in the world. These two are together. He goes off to Vietnam. Kaufman comes back. There's hanky-panky going on. This man goes off to Vietnam, comes back. He's sick, very sick. Kaufman decides to pay out of his own pocket for celebrity treatment. How do they do this? Andy switches IDs with the man. And they don't break character. They switched IDs. Andy said, I'm going to be you, you're going to be me. What do you say to that? When you go in there and you get your celebrity treatment, you tell them you're Andy Kaufman. And you don't break character. And I'm going to be you. I'm not breaking character.
So the theory goes that Andy, having switched identities with his former baby mama's new husband, he is getting this better treatment with hopes that he might be able to get out of the situation. But unfortunately, he ends up passing away as Andy Kaufman, which allows him to continue living as whoever this guy is. That's the theory. Part of this theory stems from the fact that Stephen is his actual son, which we don't know if he is or not. We don't even know if Stephen is running this site or not. So there's no way to verify this. Right now, it's just a story.
He was a famous actor-comedian. He was declared dead almost 30 years ago. But there's an urban legend. Andy Kaufman faked his own death as his ultimate last prank. And there are people that believe he's been hiding out right here in Albuquerque. News 13's Tina Jensen has the story.
Andy Kaufman was considered by some as less a comedian and more of a performance artist who wanted to make the audience question reality. Some say if anyone could pull off faking his own cancer death in LA 29 years ago this month, it would be Andy Kaufman.
I think it's certainly possible that he's still alive.
Edgewood writer Jack Bristow is part of a group of fans recently interviewed by the Huffington Post who explain in detail why some people believe Kaufman has created a whole different life in the land of enchantment.
He told people he was going to fake his death before it happened, years before.
As the story goes, fans say Kaufman has a long-lost son in Indiana who eventually tracked Kaufman down in Albuquerque. Fans believe the son created this cryptic video of Kaufman and posted it online after Kaufman shunned him. Whoever posted the video claims one of the clips shows Kaufman walking through a parking lot full of New Mexico license plates, but it's this clip that causes the most speculation.
I don't know if it's him or not, but that one black and white one where it shows his face, I think it looks like it could possibly be him.
And it's not the first time the New Mexico theory has come up. A few years ago, there were rumors he was living in Taos. And in 2005, a claim that Andy Kaufman was seen panhandling at an Albuquerque Walmart, something he was known to do as a gag. So is Kaufman living a whole new life in Albuquerque?
Hey,
I am out, man. Read my lips.
For Kaufman's believers, the legends and the questions continue. Tina Jensen, KRQE News 13.
There are also fans who say if he's living in Albuquerque, he should be left alone. If Andy Kaufman were actually alive today, he'd be 64.
But there's also another body double theory, because when Andy would admit himself into a hospital or a hotel or whatever, he would use a fake name. And apparently it was Nathan McCoy. I don't know. There's speculation as to where that came from, but that is a typical name that he would use. And that's the name that he used to check into the hospital at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. So there's a lot of speculation that this Nathan McCoy might have actually just been swapped out with some random person because, well, it's a fake name, so they don't know who it really is. But there's been no confirmation of this Nathan McCoy character. We have no way to verify. And there's just this video, I don't know who this chick is, but it was on this page, and this page is entirely dedicated to Andy Kaufman faking his death. And she says that she had a conversation with whoever this King person is, who she says is Stephen Maddox, the son of Andy. And she says that she is fully 1000% convinced that Andy is still alive out there. I don't know, she's extremely confident. And she says she's a doctor, so I don't know if that's legit, but I guess it gives her a little more credibility, right?
I asked a room full of people the other night. Well, actually, I said, did you know that Andy Kaufman is alive? They said, oh, that comedian, the guy who died in 1984. I said, no, he did not die. All of these people, no one, they all looked at each other. I thought, is she crazy? Yes. Absolutely, I am crazy. Absolutely. But I would have it absolutely no other way. But for those of you who are wondering, he's alive. Okay, he's living happily with his family in a place like the rest of us, just doing it quietly, outside of the cameras, away from prying eyes and questions and why? Who wants that? If I were him, like I said, I would never come out. I would never tell the world where I was. I would never say, oh, here I am after a quarter of a century, ha. For what? So David Letterman can say, what the hell was this all about? Give me a break. Are you kidding me? It's stupid. Absolutely no point to it. Peaceful life, that's what matters. What matters is where you find your heart. That's what matters, and that's what he's doing. And no way in hell would I ever come out something like the world as it is now to a bunch of stupid comments, and it would be dumb. So, Andy Kaufman, Stephen Maddox, the son of man. I want to say thank you for involving me and filling me in and that awesome conversation and telling me pretty much everything.
To confuse things even further, a young lady named Alexandra Tatarsky, she's a young actress. She reaches out to Michael Kaufman, which is Andy's brother, and writes a letter to him saying, I'm Andy's daughter. I've been in contact with him. He's reached out since he's died. He's still alive. He's still out there. And I would love to come and tell you all about this whole story and just share my story with you. She brings a letter that's allegedly from Andy explaining how he faked his death and that he's still alive and everything's good. Everybody is just wondering, like, what the heck? Is this real? Michael even introduces her as Andy's daughter.
Like, I'm not trying to prove anything, you know? It's just that, like, he told me this because he was really sad about his dad, and it's very strange for me, too, because I didn't get to meet him. I never got to meet you. I mean, it would make you my uncle and stuff. So do you feel like I'm your uncle? I don't feel like you're my uncle because I don't know you, but you have the similar thingy, like eyes and stuff.
Does he have any message? No, he sent me. He was giving a message.
Well, he didn't tell me specifically to impart anything, but I just know that he's so, like, excited about this. I didn't know that he watched all of the stuff on YouTube because he hid everything from us or on the internet. But then when we had a million discussions because it was really crazy, he did say, like, how much he cares about the awards and feels like, you know, because that's his only representation in the world, whatever. So I don't know how much longer he can keep everything away.
Did he almost come this year?
Well, he was really thinking about it.
So he's really getting close to, like, revealing himself?
I don't know what to say. I mean, he was really thinking about coming. I think, like, something in him needs to come out, you know, and I, of course, getting to know this new part of my dad and stuff, I think, like, I don't know, that would be fun to see that.
What's he doing now?
Well, he just wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, you know, because that's why he wanted to leave the showbiz and whatever. And so he's just pretty much a great dad and raised us. And my mom has her own business and stuff like that. And then he helps her with that kind of thing, paperwork and stuff, so he can work from home. And he doesn't have to be hiding, concealing himself. But he just makes us food and takes care of the house and stuff.
At the risk of looking like a fool, even more now, I'm not hungry, just in case you want my needs. So please, nobody follow. I won't give you your name. I don't know your name. Let her have her privacy. Thank you. My Danny sends him my love.
But just a few months later, Michael comes out in a news broadcast and talks about how he feels like he was just a part of a massive hoax. This girl, she's an actress, and likely this was just all a huge setup. Who knows? It could have even been set up by Bob Zmuda, because he's that kind of a guy. He would maybe do some shit like that. But my question was like, does he have a son or a daughter? Because it's confirmed that he did have a kid when he was young, but the kid was given up for adoption, so we don't really know. This timeline article I found here says he had a daughter, though, so I don't know. What's going on? What makes it really hard for most people to believe is the fact that Andy did have an open casket at his funeral. Multiple of his friends actually said they went up and touched the body to make sure that he was actually dead because they didn't believe it. So there's multiple people who said it definitely was him, but there's also people who are like, even though I saw the body and know that this is what the story is, I just can't believe it. There's a part of me that believes he's going to come back and he's going to be like, ha, I got you guys. Allegedly, Jim Carrey was one of those people, but there's also this story that I found this video of where he talks about Jim Carrey during the filming of Man on the Moon. He actually held a seance with a bunch of the cast members to summon the spirit of Andy Kaufman.
But can I just tell you something about that belly room also? And it brings up something, the scariest thing I've ever seen up there. One night at 2 a.m, I was hanging out there, okay? And they go, you can hang out here, but upstairs they're doing something, but you cannot go up there in the belly room. Like, it's closed. Who gives a fuck? He's like, there's something going up there. Do not go up there. But I went up there. The back entrance, up the black. I opened up that back thing, right? It's pitch black in there, but I see candles, right? I swear to God, I saw this. 15 people wearing hoods and purple cloaks. Oh my God. Okay? And they're chanting. Right? And then, so I go back downstairs and I wait to see. They come down after the seance. You know who I saw? One of them was Lily Tomlin. Okay? The second one was Bob Zmuda. You know Bob Zmuda? And they were seancing Andy Kaufman's ghost.
Did it work?
I don't know. I didn't stay up there long enough to know. But what I'm saying is that there's something about that belly room that is a portal of something. Why are you laughing?
It's just crazy. It's a comedy club, and it's like a haunted house.
And then he proceeds to be Andy Kaufman 24/7 for the entire filming of the movie. So, makes you wonder. It would be irresponsible of me not to include the fittest flat earther comparison between Adam Schiff, a senator from California, and Andy Kaufman. And when you look at this comparison, this overlay, it's pretty wild, actually. They're very, very similar. He's definitely got the same buggy eyes, and I don't know. It very well could be. What makes the Adam Schiff theory so interesting to me is the fact that Daniel Lawrence Whitney, aka Larry the Cable Guy, he tweeted about how he thinks that Adam Schiff looks like a future version or possibly just Andy Kaufman. Twitter immediately starts taking his followers away, just like unfollowing him, just automatically. Even his wife mentions that he disappeared from her feed like 10 minutes after he posted that. So that's a little suspicious. But the one that I found the most interesting was Nicolas Cage. And if you look at these two, at first you're like, nah. But then when you really look at it, you're like, oh, I can kind of see it. And it gets really interesting when you find out that Nicolas Cage was the first choice by the director of Man on the Moon for Andy Kaufman's character. He turned it down, and ultimately Jim Carrey worked really, really hard auditioning to try and get the part. Maybe a little too hard, but Whoa, right? Nicolas Cage? Regardless of whether Andy is actually alive or not, the tale of him still being alive and having faked his death is one that is truly legendary and almost feels perfect, like the perfect ending to the Andy Kaufman saga. I couldn't see him going out any other way. And a part of me wonders if maybe 3 years prior, when he started talking about the lung cancer thing, started planning the whole fake my death thing, maybe he already knew he had lung cancer or some sort of terminal disease. And this was just his plan, his last hurrah, his way to go out on top, leaving people with one last bit, with one last feeling of, was that real or not? What's going on here? But either way, it seems like there is a whole lot more people out there that believe Andy did fake his death than didn't. And I mean, there's even this political cartoon that kind of shows that that seems to be the mainstream concept of what happened to Andy. That seems to be the mainstream belief of what happened to Andy. And he will forever live on as a legend and probably one of the greatest hoaxers, comedians, entertainers, song and dance men of all time. Oh, and wrestlers. During the Marc Maron interview with Bob Zmuda, they're talking about what Andy really did for the world of comedy, and I think that it was perfectly put. What Andy did was he opened up the stage, he opened up the space for comedians to literally do anything they wanted to do, push the boundaries as far as they wanted to push them without the repercussions of people judging them, without the crowd being pushed too far. He really opened up the space for future comedians. People like Robin Williams, people like Jim Carrey. Just so many acts nowadays follow that similar, awkward, uncomfortable humor template that Andy established. So, did Andy fake his death? Or did he pass away from lung cancer at the age of 35 in a really rare situation? Drop it in the comments. But that's all I got for you guys this week. I appreciate you sitting, chilling, hanging with me. Please like the video on the way out. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you can see more. I drop new videos every Friday. But I look forward to doing this again with you guys next week for another one. But until then, sleep safe, stay awake, stay sober. But one thing's for sure. Me, still being out here, doing these shows, doing these appearances. That's what's keeping Andy Kaufman alive. Whether he's out there for real or not, Andy lives on right here in our hearts. Right here. But I'm about sick and tired of being called Andy Kaufman. Sick and tired of being compared to him. His talent, nowhere near the talent that I exist. His talent, nowhere near my talent. Got more talent in my pinky finger than he's got in his entire body. And I'm about sick and tired of being compared to him. And with that in mind, I'm going to be leaving. I'm out. I'm out. I am out of here. I am out of here. I'm out of here. Call me Andy Kaufman. I'm not Andy Kaufman. Not Andy Kaufman. I will serve thee.
Let's go.
Thank you very much.